What we do here is go back.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Lost Media podcast. When it comes to film, Australia has a very proud honour and a very proud record. And that record is that we made the first ever full-length feature film. The only problem, most of it is lost. Probably forever. The film is called The Story of the Kelly Gang, and it was recorded on silver nitrate film, which degrades very quickly and is also very flammable. Don't get it near fire or everything will burn down. This is one of those really unique but also kind of sad pieces of lost media because it's extremely unlikely. In fact, it is almost impossible that the entire 1 hour and 10 minute running time of the film, The Story of the Kelly Gang, will be recovered. And it makes me very sad because even though Australia and the Australian film industry has this amazing honour of making the first feature film and also changing the film landscape forever, because as we know, an hour and 10 minutes, some films these days are an hour and 10 minutes, and that is the general running time of a film, an hour plus, an hour and 10 minutes plus. But back then, it wasn't a thing, and we have actually pioneered this film running time that we all know today. Even though we pioneered this, and the Australian film industry has done an amazing job. I think I just said Australian. It will forever go down in history as a lost film, and it kind of sums up Australian film as a whole. Despite pioneering this, we haven't made many films. In fact, we haven't really had a huge impact on the film industry. The UK, the US, and especially India with Bollywood have probably been the 3 biggest in my eyes with filmmaking. This is a sad one, as I've said. I'm glad this is in a podcast form, because if this was a real video, my God, a lot of work would need to be done. Just like the work that was done to actually get the 20 minutes of this film restored. As you can see in the background playing behind me, that is the 20 minutes that exists, the only 20 minutes of the story of the Kelly Gang. And the way this was found is actually quite interesting. Part of it was found in a dumpster, part of it was found in archives, and they gradually, bit by bit, over several years, restored this segment of the film. And what's playing behind me, what's about to come up eventually, is the really important final scene of the film where the Kelly Gang have their final fight, and it's Ned Kelly's last stand. And in the film, he and his fellow gang members get killed in the fight. In real life, Ned Kelly got hanged for his crimes and tried. And it's obviously based, if you don't know, if you're American, on the true story of Ned Kelly, who was an Australian bushranger back in the 1800s. He was a massive outlaw, and he would steal money, kill people, kill police officers especially. And he's actually forged Australian culture as we know it. That real convict, that real against the authority kind of way that Australians are. We hate our cops. We're very self-righteous, and this guy kind of pioneered. Well, he didn't pioneer anything. He was a criminal. But he kind of shaped what Australian, the general Aussieisms that are kind of entrenched in our culture today. And it's really fascinating, that this is the first, subject for film. And actually, fun fact, 5 years after this film's release, Australian bushranger films were just banned from being made because they didn't like, how much it was encouraging gang violence, when really it was just a depiction of something that happened historically and wasn't really designed to encourage, violence or gang violence. It's just a little film. Apparently this film inspired some young kids to hold up younger kids at gunpoint with the police standoff, which is really, I think, questionable. But it's one of those early examples of so many things. Film inspiring people to do things in real life. A lot of people becoming obsessed over a movie. This film was extremely successful when it came out in 1906. And obviously, with the running time of an hour and 10 minutes, that was just unheard of. It was essentially watching a stage play, but in glorious film. You would have felt like it was something magical when you saw this in 1906 because it just had never been done before. And I wish it hadn't been recorded on... Apparently it was like 2,400 meters of film that was recovered. What's being played behind me is 2,400 meters, and it was quite a lot, considering that this should have probably been completely lost when you really think about it. A silver nitrate is, the oldest form of film. It's the weakest form of film that you can possibly record a movie on these days. It's recognized as that. But back then it was state of the art. It was the newest thing. It was incredible. No one really realized though how badly it degraded, and the story of the Kelly Gang just became forgotten. Due to the fact that there was no real no grassroots for film, it wasn't really, something that was, people were just predicting, oh, this will be remembered and we have to, archive this and take care of it. It was so new back then. It's like archiving TikToks these days. You wouldn't want to, because it just, how do you know if it's ever going to be culturally relevant one day? And they just didn't give a crap about it. And part of the film was found, I think it was 1975 or 1976 from my research recently. Done a bit of extra research, obviously, for this one. And that's how they kind of got, like, I think a couple of minutes of it worth, and more than just some screenshots, because for the longest time, all that existed of the story of the Kelly Gang was just screenshots from the movie. And you want to actually recover it. Of course, an hour and 10 minutes, 1906, it's a silent film, obviously, with text coming up on screen to give the viewers context of what's going on. And there is music, piano music, I think, that was played in the background. I don't think the audience were just sitting there watching with just dead silence. I mean, even if there is that in the theatre, everyone would be discussing, with their thoughts and what they think's going on and how they think the movie's progressing. You got to kind of cast your mind back to 1906 and what it would have been like for the people watching a film like this. And I think when you watch it behind me, you just think, oh, that's old, old movie. But it seriously was groundbreaking cinema, changed everything. And without this film, you wouldn't get your Marvel movies these days, kids. You wouldn't be able to enjoy those. So stupid. One of the things that is so important about this lost media is the I think it's called a record, or the program, that's right, that they hand out at the theaters that they made for this movie being premiered. That still exists. That was recovered. And that basically explains the entire movie, gives away the whole movie. But that's good that it gave away the whole movie, because we actually know what happens and we know every single scene and we know it play by play. There's no scripts or anything that still exists from the story of the Kelly Gang. There's no screenplays. It's just that program. So to have that is awesome, because we know what's missing and what needs to be found. But silver nitrate, easily flammable, degrades so quickly. 20 odd years ago, it's 117 years ago, it's there's no chance that this is going to be found. If it does get found, it'd probably be the most amazing discovery of lost media in history, because for something like this to be recovered would be actually a technological breakthrough, I think. if you even find the original reels, if they even still exist and they're not degraded, which is extremely unlikely, almost impossible. Can't rule it out entirely. Can't say it's completely impossible, but you make a fair argument that it isn't possible. That would be extraordinary. That would be absolutely ridiculous. And to get it restored, playing behind me, would be something else as well. That would be something quite special. But I don't think it's going to happen. For the 20 minutes to be restored, just that, awesome. And the most important part of the movie, by the way, which is coming up behind me, Ned Kelly's last stand, that's the part you want. If you're going to get any part of this movie restored, that is the scene that you definitely need. The final scene of the movie, the crescendo of the film. Because it's a good chance that the first full-length feature film, especially an Australian film, they're bloody boring, is not going to be that enticing to watch anyway. So maybe it's meant to be lost. Maybe it is just so boring and so bad. It's just... I'm pretty sure a very rich family produced this film, and it was made in a budget of £1,000, which, of course, obviously back then, shit ton of money. I don't know how much that is adjusted for inflation. Might go upwards of close to $1 million, upwards, adjusted, sorry, for inflation. But yeah, it's fascinating. I'm just fascinated the process that it took to make this film and why they wanted it to be an hour and 10 minutes long. My guess is they wanted it to be that long because they wanted it to emulate somewhat of a stage play, and they wanted to just, change the fabric of what was possible. Instead of people on a stage play right in front of them, it's on a screen, and it was filmed ages ago, and it's being premiered ages later to all these people, packing out a theater. They were pioneers, and they didn't know it. And if they knew it, they would have saved this film, and they would have kept it, as I said earlier. They would have made sure that future people would be able to watch this film and be able to, view it for what it was. And that was a piece of cinema history, a very special piece of cinema history, and Australian cinema history. My God, probably in my eyes, it's the most important piece of Australian cinema. Yeah, if more of this film, if even a couple more minutes of this film, I don't know how long that is in meters length of a film, but if that gets discovered, even that's a stupidly incredible breakthrough. Like the next topic I'm about to discuss in the next episode of the podcast, might be a chance. There might be a chance. It might just have been preserved somewhere in an old, safe or an old house, and someone's just got it sitting there. And it could be restored. It could be, but unlikely. Very unlikely. Because it is distributed to more than one theater, I think. I don't know. That's a part of that. That's a stupid guesstimation that it's distributed to more than one theater. I think it would only have been in a handful of theaters back then. Very popular film though, so something so popular, something that everyone was obsessed with, caused Bushranger films to be banned entirely 5 years later. Someone might have saved the entire runtime of the story of the Kelly gang. Of course, it's very cool to see this film sort of almost recreated with the Heath Ledger Ned Kelly film, which I'm still yet to see, and Ned Kelly's Last Stand, which I think is coming up behind me. It's coming up very soon. Stay tuned for that, if you can bear my awful commentary. I'm still trying to remember as I do this podcast the intricacies of this film that I'm familiar with, because I have been studying it for quite a while, believe it or not. Recreations and remakes of this is fascinating to me, because you're remaking a piece of cinema history, and it was almost 97 or 98 years later that the Heath Ledger film came out, and the final scene of the Heath Ledger film, I think, is basically a recreation of the final scene of this film, because, as I said, in real life, a lot of Kelly members were shot, a lot of Ned Kelly gang members died, And if you don't know the history of Ned Kelly, guys, a special extra piece of history. He wore now infamous or famous iron helmet that was stupidly heavy. You get very overheated in it. And he also had iron armor. So he couldn't be touched. He, you couldn't stop him, the old bushranger. And shot in the head many, many times. But of course, the bullets couldn't penetrate his iron helmet. And in his final stand, in Ned Kelly's final stand, he's wearing that iron helmet, but he's shot somehow. He's shot in the 1906 film and in the 2003 film. But in real life, his members, I think, were killed in a fair few shootouts. And I think there was one final shootout where he was eventually caught, finally. And he was wearing obviously all the armor and the iron helmet that does still exist to this day. It has been preserved historically, which is very cool. That's not lost media. It's a helmet. It's not media. Yeah. What I was going to say that's so important about, this film playing behind me is what the actors are wearing, and what Ned Kelly in the film is wearing, the guy playing him, is Ned Kelly's real armor from real life, from 40 or so years earlier. And another fascinating aspect, I guess, of this is it's only 30 or 40 years later they're acting this out. It already had a cultural and historical relevance, that soon after this all happening. It was entrenched in Australian folklore. And of course, Australia, a new country relatively, like only 140 odd years old. We were desperately clamoring on for something uniquely Australian and uniquely our own thing, because you get so sick of being referred to the British and being, say, oh, you're British convicts and stuff. We wanted our own thing, and we wanted a piece of, Australiana history. And I think that's why this was such a perfect thing to cover it as a full-length feature film, and as, something to make a massive show about film. So, the story of the Kelly Gang, the 20 minutes playing behind me is almost up. Will this film be found? Can you find it? Are there ways to find it? Can you track down relatives of the people involved in the filmmaking? All that, I'm pretty sure, has been attempted. But I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure all that has been attempted and nothing. I'm more interested in how that 20 minutes was found than trying to find the rest of it. Because the rest of it is just not, I don't know, it's just not feasible to find it. The fact that we've got this is enough for me. And the ways in which you can do some more research, I'll put some links in the description to how they actually found this, because off the top of my head, all I know is they found literally 2 minutes at a time, 20 meters of footage or 200 meters of footage at a time. And bit by bit, piece by piece, between 1976 and I think about the 2000s, the mid 2000s, they were able to come up with this 20-minute presentation of the story of the Kelly Gang. The old 1906 film. It's a classic. It's a shame it's lost. But hey, it's another piece of good old-fashioned lost media. And this is another garbage lost media podcast. I hope all the topics I talk about on this podcast aren't done in such a vague way. I apologize if you're listening to this and you think, oh, geez, this is he's repeating himself a little bit, and there's a very vague description of this. Partially because it's extremely old, and partially because I'm, trying to recall different bits and bobs of this that I'd forgotten over the years. But we're going to review some more popular lost media very soon on the podcast, some more recent things that are specified or guessed to be lost. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey. I'm trying to focus on stuff that is currently lost. I don't really want to look at things that were lost and then became found, because that's stuff that used to interest me but doesn't really interest me that much anymore. Please, once again, as I said, in the comments of this, give me your suggestions. Suggestions are more than welcome, because it helps me a lot with topics to cover on the podcast. Shrek Lost Media potentially coming up soon, and that should be fun. Should be good. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm an Aussie. I'm a classic Aussie film fan, and this has been the story of the Kelly Gang. Roll that shitty outro.